Welcome, everyone. Welcome to Hamdom Thoughts Livestream. This is our second episode of Season 2. And as you can see, I'm here with the Tech Prepper, KT7RUN, Gaston. Welcome, Gaston.
Hey, Dennis. It's good to be on the show, this time with video.
Yeah. I apologize to anyone who was waiting for the audio from the last live stream. I know that the week just kind of got away from me and I wasn't able to get the audio and, do my fine edits on it and add all the other stuff. But that will be out soon, as well as this one, depending on how this goes. Let's see how this goes, DTP.
I'll try my best. No F-bombs.
No, please do. But just wait. I think there's a time limit before we can start dropping F-bombs. So happy Sunday. It's 2:00 here on Sunday, the 21st of April. Let me open the chat and see who's on right now. We got Lionel, Steve, Michael, and Evan. Good to see you, Chuck, too. Nice to see you there. Throughout this time, I'll be popping up people's chats, any questions you might have. But so the episode I had last week was with Jason, KM4ACK. And during that, I was very surprised to see Gaston pop in the chat. And I'm like, wow, this guy's like, as far as I could tell, he's super busy. He's always out in the field. And he was out in the field at the time. He was actually, I guess, on top of a hill or a mountain or something, and using his 5G to hook in and take a look at us and listen to part of the stream. And so I was very glad to hear from him. And then he popped in one of the comments. He's like, I want to be on the show. And so I was like, absolutely. And we had been talking about this, like all of 2023. I think we were talking about doing a Hamdom Thoughts, and I just never got off my butt and actually got it going. And so apologize for that. But yeah, here we are. Let us know how you're doing over there. What's going on in Arizona right now?
We're finally starting to get into our warmer temps. So we're in the low 90s now, and I'm just loving it. Outside of snakes, I mean, we're running into a rattlesnake almost every week now. And if not me, one of the neighbors. So it's snake boots, and I've been wearing these rubber kind of wading boots for a lot of these trips now, because we've got a lot of overgrown vegetation, and it's just freaking me out. So I invested in a pair of JK boots. They're leather, full-length wildland fire boots, but it's a 2-month lead time for that. So that's what I'm looking forward to for the warmer months now.
I can't imagine. I mean, we do have our share of rattlesnakes out here, and some of the times that I've gone out to work, we'd see the snake guy, which is like, a truck, and I think it actually says the snake guy on the side of the truck, but he would be out there, and then we'd get a memo. Back when I was going to the office, we'd get this memo and say, please don't go outside in the parking lot right now. We're trying to capture a rattlesnake that's in the lot.
Yeah.
And so it would make me super paranoid. I'd be like, going home that afternoon, evening, I'd be like, just very hyper alert of where I'm stepping between the cars.
Well, it freaks me out because I did the CERT training last year with Daisy Mountain Fire. And part of that required that I get my AED, first aid, stop the bleed. Mm-hmm. And they were talking about the incidences that they come on most often. And there are quite a few rattlesnake bites. And the antidote, which or the anti-venom that is stocked by most of the hospitals in the area, is $30,000 US per treatment. And you typically need 2, sometimes 3 treatments. I'm like, okay, this is not the time to bushwhack like I normally do till I get some real boots.
So the anti-venom comes from venom, right? It has to be extracted from a rattlesnake.
I think so. I don't know all the details, but Yeah, in most parts of the country, most hospitals don't stock it because it's not terribly common. I think you have to go through your like local poison control, but out here, since it's so prevalent, most of the hospitals actually have it on hand.
And it's always the little baby ones that you have to look out for.
Just like the scorpions too. The little guys, man, they will mess you up. My wife got stung by a little guy, and her baby toe was numb for like 3 months.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, look out for snakes, everyone. I remember when I would be following KG6HTD on his soda hikes, and he would be talking about that. He's like, look out for the little snakes. Let me draw up my notes here. We have the Tech Prepper. If you are not familiar, I'm pretty sure that everyone watching right now is familiar with TTP, but for those who might be watching this later or listening to it, the Tech Prepper is Gaston over in kind of like north of Phoenix area, I would say, in the Tanto National Forest area. Is that right?
Yeah, a little town called New River.
And yeah, very interesting ham, because a lot of his videos are ham adjacent. He has a distinct purpose to his comms that could align with ham radio or sometimes not. And I like that. He's a man on a mission. He really has kind of like what he wants to do in ham radio, or, you know, other means if possible. And has a series of projects that he's been sharing, as well as various things. What I admired early on, before I actually even knew him, was I liked just his dedication to training. And he'd always be out there. And whether it be radio, whether it be running, or, you know, just survival bushcraft kind of stuff, he'd be out there actually practicing it, getting familiar, dealing with the discomfort, just trying to get used to these things, so that when they actually come to pass, when there's anything that needed those skills, it wouldn't be something completely like surprisingly new. And you know, he'd kind of have the experience under his belt. So from there, I don't actually even know how we met, but, you know, I think I just kind of reached out to you and say, hey, you want to join JerryNet or something? And after that, just started to get to understand more what you were into. And I've always been following it. I have a few of his products here right beside me, but yeah, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, about the projects that you have, and kind of the activities you do out there.
Yeah, thanks, Dennis. Actually, we met, I think, after I did a battery build on a handcart dolly where I put a 100 amp hour lithium iron phosphate battery with a 3,000 watt, 6,000 peaks pure sine wave inverter. And at that time, we had just moved out here, and we were having brownouts like every week. And that was designed to power the refrigerator in the garage for the summer. But anyways, about 4 years ago, right at the beginning of the lockdown, I saw everybody hoarding toilet paper. And I said, babe, it's time to move. We got to get out of the apartment and go a bit farther outside of the city. So we bought this property. And I spent that first month of the lockdown basically filming with an iPhone 5 or 6, just little tiny practical preps, how to prep a bag for your dogs because they need to be part of your plan, or your pets. And at that time, 4 years ago, I had not even made my first contact. In fact, my first amateur radio contact, it will be 4 years on May 5th. That's when we moved to this property. And I was licensed 2 years before that and didn't get on the air. So really the channel, as soon as we moved to this off-grid property, I was about to give up on amateur radio and comms for the preps. And we didn't have our furniture for 3 days. And I said, you know what? I'm going to pull out the Baofeng UV5R. That was my first radio. And I made my first contact. And then I was kind of hooked. So I spent pretty much the last almost 4 years just documenting every major milestone in amateur radio, all the way from being a tech to a general, to doing summits on the air, to field day, to kind of refining the gear. And right now we have almost 320 videos. And you can kind of see the evolution of the style of operation, specifically in the desert, outdoors, man-portable. And I've got now a very specific kind of agenda and point of view, and that's using radio for true off-grid, offline backup comms. And every day is just about refining those and the gear that's required to carry out those activities.
Yep. And another thing that came to mind was how, like, you have a lot of these little flashcards or helper things that you make. You have a laminator, and you like to make these little reference cards, and that's something that I had also taken to heart from your videos. I'm like, okay, I need that, because I don't know how many times I've pulled out like my old FT857, and even something as simple as changing the transmission power from 50 watts down to 5. I'm just like, how do I do that again? And be all like in the menus, deep diving, trying to find the right place. And it would just be so much easier if I just had a little tiny reference card to go to the main settings that I normally use on these radios, because they vary. Even among Yaesus, they vary.
Yeah.
Right? And so,
well, that's why I like the Yaesu FT818, 857, and 897. It's like the little guy, the big brother, and then the big daddy, and they pretty much have the same controls, and all the components are interchangeable. But yeah, I get it. I just picked up been playing with Isaac from T-Rex Arms, his G90, and it was a whole new paradigm of operation. So first thing I did was create field cards just to do the basics. How do you go into memory mode? How do you change the power? How do you tune it? How do you do an SWR sweep? Things like that. So super helpful. And it really helps if you don't have a great memory and are under duress or stress. Yep.
Yeah. So why don't you tell us a little bit more about that? The G90, I guess you're known for these man packs. And I have one right here for show and tell. This is my 857 man pack that I have here. And you can see it's pretty tall. I was just, before we started, I was just showing you the battery to this, but I have I've been working on a bigger version of the Denko that someone had requested. And I actually made a prototype one for this rig. But I guess the G90 is, you're also looking at doing something. You mentioned in your videos, you're doing something like this.
Yeah.
Or you're with as a collab for the G90. So why don't you tell us about that?
Yeah, so there's a few things going on. So the man pack that Dennis is showing, there are only 26 total, and he has one of them. Yeah, I've got the prototype and bag number 1, and my bag manufacturer burnt out about a year ago, and I wasn't able to produce anymore, and I was burnt out by the whole bag industry. So I told myself, I'm not going to do this anymore. Everybody who wants one has one. But then Isaac from T-Rex Arms reached out to me. He's got a great channel. I don't know if it's going to be with him or through his new channel, T-Rex Labs. And he's like, let's do a targeted contact. I want to get more people into the fold and kind of understand what the realities of true off-grid comms are. So I said, yeah, send me your G90. And I let my ADHD just go completely crazy with it. So he sent it thinking it was going to be this quick turnaround. No, I contacted Armorlock. I said, hey, would you mind donating a set of frames for the G90? He's like, sure. I pulled out my old original bag that is commercially available, the PRC 117 golf pouch, which is the rough dimensions of the bag that Dennis showed for the main housing. Put a small pouch on the front, the 511 6x6 admin pouch. Got the Digi rig for it, wired it up, did the whole power management thing, bought a 6 amp hour battery for it. Turns out, I told myself I would never buy a G90. I'm not a big fan of Chinese radios. So in playing with that radio and finding that radio was $400, I said, you know what? I'm going to pull the trigger on this before I tell anybody. So I bought 2 about 2 weeks ago. It's not the radio for me, but it has a ton of value at $400. So I bought 2 of them. I sent one to my buddy Mike, who helps me train. He's about 200 miles, so we do a lot of NVIS testing. And so this video now has turned into this massive thing. And Isaac's like, I didn't think you were going to take this man pack as far as you did. And then since we're using the Digi rig, I'm also sending him this guy right here. This is the Panasonic FZ-M1 Tough Pad. It's the older Mark I, this 7-inch tablet with this iKey keyboard. And it's the field notebook of choice that I've been using now since January of 2023. So I've got this loaded with a project we're going to talk about today called EMCOMM Tools, and I added plug and play support. So literally, I'm writing a field manual that follows kind of what the military has done with their grunts of simple IKEA picture of how you deploy the antenna. I'm channelizing the radio for us, picking the bands that I know will work given our 1,500 mile path, which will be 12 meters or 17 meters. So I built a couple of dipoles. And basically, he just needs to power on the radio, power on the notebook, plug in the USB cable, click one button, and him and I should have comms up and running. So that's really the philosophy of what I'm trying to do is find gear that is rugged, robust, make it simple to use, even if it limits a large portion of the amateur radio audience. People said, oh, why don't you make it run on a Pi and support this radio? And if you open it up to that, there's a lot of complexity that actually harms the simplicity of what I'm trying to do. So there's about 3 videos on my channel already that have documented that process. The next big one is going to be how I write the comms plan to support that specific targeted contact between myself and him, given his skill set as a general, his gear. So it's a very practical prepping. Like I'm not chasing radios. I'm not doing unboxings. I'm not doing what's popular. I'm on a mission to help myself, my group, and the community work with gear that I know works. Like I'm not blowing smoke up anybody's, what here. This is the gear that I've been using. This is the bags I use. These are the radios I use. And I just like being honest with the failures.
I think that's part of the reason of the success of a lot of these things too, in terms of like the super demand, is that it is driven by just your overall, demonstration. And we know that you're not just making these things to make them; you are using them yourself. And this is like time tested in the desert kind of equipment that you will be actually trying to get out to people for practical communications. And so I feel like that has a lot of weight to it. People are like, yeah, I want to be able to experience that. We don't have desert heat out here. And I was actually surprised early on when you had a lot of videos and you were trying to use the Raspberry Pi. I was like, ooh, is it really going to survive out there in that heat? Because I know how hot it gets out there in Arizona, but we saw the result of that. We saw that, yeah, it doesn't.
No,
I've had my own issues with just even using my iPhone to do things out in the Sacramento heat. And then all of a sudden I get that little indicator that says, it's too hot. I'm not going to work for you right now.
Every summer, I can't tell you how much footage I've lost. I got very good at doing overlays and making sure I took backups. Yeah, the cell phone, GoPro, the Yaesu radios have not died, and neither have the Panasonics, but the phone is the first thing to always go. Like when I start operating in temperatures at about 114 degrees Fahrenheit, I did field day, it was 118, and I was under a tarp shelter, and I could barely run the recording equipment for more than 2 minutes. I had to put everything back under. Yeah.
118 in the shade is what you're saying? Oh
yeah, ambient temperature was 118, and I didn't have a heat gun or a thermal gun at that time to see what the ground temp was.
Crazy. But yeah, that's definitely the test right there. If it's going to be working for the tech prepper, then it's likely going to work in the more temperate areas. You're just going to need a counterpart in like the northern part of the country somewhere that can do the winter test.
I figure like someone like Julian probably has it covered in the high latitudes.
Oh yeah, that's true.
Yeah, you have different issues at that point.
Yep. So speaking of the G90 and your own efforts there, you hinted at the bags.
Oh yeah.
Anything you wanted to say about that?
Yeah. So I'm going to temper this. So I told myself I would not get back into the bag business. And I actually am. So I have a local that I found that has a different manufacturing technique. These bags are going to be produced differently. We're going to do a CAD design. They're going to be laser cut. So I'm meeting with them to do a design of the larger man pack first. So this will be the footprint of the bag that you just showed. So it'll accommodate the G90, 891, and the Yaesu 857D. So that could take some time. And again, I'm going to take it slow. So I'm going to sell first to my members by tier and then move to a model where I'm basically going to hand the reins back over to this bag maker and white label it so that he can deal with the public volume. Because the challenge I found with these niche products, I can't support a large volume of orders. So we're going to test it out. So yeah, the G90, 857, 891 man pack, I'm hoping will be available to the members within the next 3 months or sooner.
Nice.
And then probably publicly available late this year if I'm able to produce it. Because even this guy, he can only do 100 bags per month. He actually has a sewing circle, he calls it, that he sources from church. He's like, I'll get some more ladies to come and run the tables for me. But he's like, we can
own operation with the sewing circle.
But that's
that
cool.
really is local. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's all going to be, 1,000 denier Cordura, YKK zippers. I had a prototype. I don't feel comfortable showing it because it looks like a Frankenstein build because he wanted to show off all of his fabrics. So that's the other cool thing with this approach versus the one I did before. We're going to do 2 colors. So I've always told people you can have any color as long as it's coyote brown. That's not true anymore. We're also going to do Ranger green. And those are the first 2 colors. And if that all works out, I may even do the black woodland camo because the tactical nerds out there love that pattern. But I'm going to wait probably for a public release to do that. And then spoiler, I told myself I wasn't going to buy any new radios this year. The G90 was the exception. And this is related to the bags. I had a very, very kind, unnamed member who said, you have to get a 705. So there is a bag design I have mentally built that is going to be very different than any of the man packs you've seen. And I'm going to try my hand at that one as well concurrently. So after I'm done with Isaac and the G90, I'm going to transition to do some 705 stuff in the vehicle.
I have my 705 right here, and it's in a wing camp cage. And let me get that in the camera here. But love the cage. It's that like 2 brick dimensions, that it just makes it hard enough to carry everywhere without, I could just toss this thing as it is into a backpack. But what I have currently is a Nanook 915 case with the foam pulled out to match the dimensions of it this way, like, vertically like this. And then I have another space for battery, another space for the mic and all the NFED random wire, all that stuff. But it's a very bulky case. So if there was a TTP style bag for this, I'd be on that. That'd be awesome.
Keep your fingers crossed. I'll make sure you get a numbered one. So you'll get one within the first 10 units if it ever comes out.
Yeah, we got a couple comments here. Don is asking, with all the progress that TTP has made, has there ever been a failure that made him question if it was worth continuing?
Yeah, the biggest one is time. So I have a full-time technical consulting role. I've been doing it now. I've been in tech since 1997 and big boy consulting, traveling around the world, the country since 2007. So on the top end, I've done 80, 85-hour weeks for years on end.
Wow.
So when I started this, it was really easy to do a 40-hour-a-week job and then about 25 to 40 hours for this channel. And I still do that. Wake up every morning at as late as 3:55, but sometimes as early as 2 a.m. So I put 4 hours in every single day, 7 days a week before work. And then I usually spend about 16 hours on the weekend. So the biggest failure is time management, and I'm getting better at it. But I'm still running. I've been running 80-hour weeks now since January of 23. So the goal is to try to transition out. So yeah, the big failure is I haven't trusted too many people to help me do things. So I am, I finally just hired a bookkeeper yesterday because an hour of me doing the books, I could do software development. I've got a great supporter, Mike, Kilo Charlie 8, Oscar Whiskey Lima, who helps me run the live streams we do once a month and does all the training with me. So I've been offloading some things. So it's just my personality. I'm a control freak. I know how I want to do things. And I burnt out in my career. I burn out in my career every 3 years or 3 times. And he's like, that's Gaston. He's just going to do a 12-month project, 14-month project, do the 80-hour weeks, get stressed out and give everybody the finger. And then I'll hire him back in 3 months. So yeah, that's my biggest weakness is this. I don't have an off button and I try to do everything myself.
I feel like that's part of the reason why everyone is so interested in EMCOMM Tools is that, you really have like this intensity about it where you're cutting out, like I was looking at the community page that you put up and you were like, okay, let's make this USB stick. And basically we're nailing it down to 2210. Or was it 2210? I think.
Yeah. Ubuntu 22.10.
And we are basically, this is the version we're using because, subsequent versions are going to mess up things. So we want to freeze it here. We want to make sure that it works. This is the supported hardware. And the person looking at this would probably be like, well, what if I want to use my crap top with, the latest Linux? Well, what's going on with this? And I'm sure you get that a lot. Like a lot of people suggesting all these different things that you should be doing, but you have like the Steve Jobs like focus of saying no to people and just saying, no, this is the path. I want to do this path. I want this path to work and be tested. And then, if you want to expand it from there, that's up to you. But, this is what we're doing. And I think that in itself gets a following because people are like, okay, this guy knows what he wants to do. So let's see how this turns out, Yeah,
and I'm looking forward to it. And what I like to tell people, like, for example, Jason, who is one of the reasons why I'm still doing this channel, KM4ACK, that was interviewed last week. He had built a Pi and then he transitioned over to 73 Linux. And we have similar goals of making the entrance into using digital with a radio easier. But his is more, let's try to please as many people as possible. And we'll take them 90% of the way there. Where I'm like, no, this is going to be an appliance. If it's an appliance, the operating system I use is an implementation detail. It's not a choice. And the reason for that is simple. Like if there's an issue with the kernel, I patch it. For example, last year, everybody was freaking out in the community when there were some changes to, I think, the 5.10.x kernel, and it broke the RDOP for WinLink modem. And I figured out a workaround and a fix for 22.10. I'm like, I don't care. It works. I'm not going to chase this. I'm not going to do an upgrade that's going to potentially break everything else. And that's part of the reason why I haven't really even released it. So if we take a step back, MCOM Tools initially was a collection of prototypes I wrote for the Pi to make field operations easy. And when I was starting out with it, when you get into amateur radio, you've got all of these paths and tunnels that you can take. And I'm like, ooh, APRS, that looks fun. What's that about? Ooh, you can use Packet for WinLink. Ooh, you can use Packet to send SMS messages. Ooh, you can use Packet to get weather. And I wrote a bunch of quick prototypes to make that easy to use. And then I got into WinLink and HF and played with that. And then I wanted to do a bunch of these different things. I kept on adding on to it, and I never really took it to completion. And after I realized the Pi was not going to be a platform for me because it turned out to be unreliable in an austere environment like the Sonoran Desert, I found about 18 months ago, maybe 2 years ago, the Panasonic CF20, and it was a ruggedized tablet, and that opened me up to a display. I'm like, ooh, I don't have to bring a display. I don't have to bring a keyboard. I don't have to do a mouse. It's a self-contained unit. And that opened it up to some mapping capabilities. So I went down another rabbit hole of let's do an offline call sign database. Let's do offline mapping. And it started to be this massive collection of prototypes that were never fully complete. So I never really released it. People have seen prototypes. So now what we're doing is I can't distribute it the way I wanted to, which was on a USB drive to sell. Mostly because since I'm using Ubuntu, there's some licensing restrictions and branding restrictions. And so what we're doing instead is I'm creating scripts on the community.mcomtools.com site. And I'm showing people this is how we build a full offline Linux image that's built on Ubuntu 22.10. And I'm bringing over the scripts from the kind of this previous commercial version into it slowly. So we have just one release out there. The second release is only going to introduce tools that provide the highest value for MCOM. So for me, it's JS8 call and basically hamlib. So the next build is going to allow people to start to use what I believe is the most powerful MCOM tool mode for low power operation and works with poor HF conditions. R3 is going to be the basic plug and play support, assuming you have the approved hardware like the Digi rig and some of the Yaesus. R4 is going to start to introduce the application front end that gives you the ability to do a few things. So kind of skipping forward, actually, hold on, let me stop here. What I found in doing a lot of these operations is that JS8 call for me also isn't meeting all my needs. I don't like the fact that it requires a keyboard and mouse, which requires that I have the tablet with the keyboard. So I'm forking JS8 call, the code base. And there's certain features that don't exist. So the first feature that I want is one-click support to automatically drift the time. Not go into this menu, right-click on this, do this. It's terrible in the field. So I'm going to add that, but then I'm going to build a custom interface on top of it. So you're literally going to have a dashboard that has the sequence of operations I need to go in the field. So it'll be sync time, good. All right. Check messages, and it does all the backend stuff for you. So it's going to do like a message to all call. Do you have a message for me? These 5 stations come back. It'll go back and ask them, and you basically will have an inbox. There'll be some macros. So basically it's going to be like the in and out kind of point of sale kind of system. And the reason for that too is also I'm doing more vehicle mounted operations. So I can actually now also manipulate the radio while I'm driving on the dashboard.
Yep. You don't want to be concentrating on a keyboard or even a virtual keyboard while doing something like that.
So that's kind of the philosophy, is what is the most set of impactful, simple to use features, and just take them one kind of step at a time. But the one that I'm most excited about to kind of fast forward about maybe 12 releases into the future is what I'm doing for the target communication. So how do I talk to someone in my state or someone in my region or someone like Isaac who's 1,200 miles away? And to do that, offline vocab analysis, the Voice of America, was it capture and analysis program? So it will also do kind of like the vocab.com HF site, offline off-grid predictions, and it'll brute force and tell you, if you want to use WinLink right now, this is the gateway you need to talk to, regardless of where it is in the world, based on your current location. It takes all of the magic out of the equation for you. So really looking forward to that. And then the other thing, we've got this thing called the TTP Elmer Hour that's run by my buddy Padre. And he showed us how to use something called EasyNIC, which is an antenna modeling software. And he found out a way to export the antenna model for use by vocab. So if you kind of eat the dog food and start to use the antennas that Tim N9SAB and I are building, you'll be able to click the TTP MCOM link dipole, the TTP anti-field day workbander antenna at various heights, and the model will already be built in for you. So again, I'm not going to put every freaking antenna that's available out there, but the core field antennas are going to be part of that. So the intention is in the future, without the internet, you can fully predict who to talk to, which bands, what time of day, and then primarily focused on 2 modes of operation. That'll be JSA call, WinLink, and potentially another FL Digi mode. So that's kind of the overall high level roadmap of what I'm trying to do.
Yeah, it was that was actually like my next three questions, like what is MCOM and what are your plans for it? But yeah, it's really whenever I load up a ham radio laptop, the first thing I will try is JS8 call, because I know I'm likely to get a response, and it's probably like the most practiced path that I have for testing out a new rig, testing out a new system.
Yep.
With my talk with CAM4 ACK, everyone saw that I was having my struggles and frustrations under Linux Mint in just getting a system set up where everything runs simultaneously. And one of the first things I did, though, prior to those troubles, was I was out there pinging people, seeing how far I could get, using PSK Reporter to see how far my signal was getting with the JS8 call attempts. And so if anyone ever has me on Ham Alert, they'll likely see either CW or JS8 call as my Ham Alerts. You won't really ever see me like doing POTA or, although I would like to, but that's not my primary way of going on the air these days. And yeah, it sounds really cool. As you were talking, I was thinking about how, and I think I mentioned this to Jason last week, how it's kind of like you're on a parallel path, but your path is definitely more focused on, just turnkey comms. You just want to be able to have this gear, and it's not necessarily about the customization or the journey of building your system, but it really is about, I'm out in the field and I need to make these, communications to certain people. And so tools get out of the way, just take away all these decision points, and there's just like, let's just start talking to each other.
Yeah, so there's some amazing opportunities. There's an area, and I'm going to put out a call to arms. I'm a software engineer, and the one thing I'll admit that I've never been good at is mathematics, high level math, especially when I was taking engineering classes in college. And DSP programming that are required for building a lot of the modems that are used under the hood, like FT8, JS8, I mean, regardless, RDOP, VARA, have a lot of mathematics that are required, and then deep knowledge of audio programming, fast Fourier transforms, and things like that. So I bought this academic graduate level textbook that took like 4 months to get here. It was like $250 textbook, massive.
Wow.
I've been trying to get to the first 10 pages for about 2 months. And there's some things that I want to do that I haven't found out that I want to integrate into EMCOMM Tools. I'm even willing to pay for this out of channel funds. So I'm looking for a modulator and demodulator, basically a modem, for processing the WWV signal out of Fort Collins, because they actually encode all the information you need to set your time. I know there's a version that only runs on Windows, and old versions of the NTP server had it built in, but they removed it years ago because of the internet. So again, their thought is you could tune your radio to 2.5 megahertz, 5 megahertz, 10, 15, 20, depending on the time of day. And it would automatically launch that modem, decode it, and set your system clock. So that's one piece I want to solve. The second one is the same message format. So if you ever listened to like the NOAA weather broadcasts, you hear that chirping in the background. That actually has encoded broadcast messages. And I found a few encoders and decoders online that will turn that into English text. But I also want to be able to say, okay, part of my EMCOMM plan, if the grid goes down, I want localized reports. But rather than listening to all that, it'd be nice to just have your radio switch over with EMCOMM Tools to switch that mode and decode all of the messages. So I'm looking for, all of the tools I'm doing are for real practical emergencies, whether it's relaying information, whether it's the realities of having an off-grid mechanism to set the clock, or interpreting some of those messages. So anybody who has a DSP background and is willing to help, I've got some funds and would love to contract someone to help me with some modems.
All right, we have a question here from Jeff KS0JD. It seems that the application JS8 call website has been mothballed. Is the application being abandoned?
So I don't know.
No.
I don't know too much about it. I know it hasn't been updated in a while. The only thing I do know is that Jordan Shear, who did create it, he built it while he was on paternity leave when he was having, I think, his first child. And he had like a 3-month window where he kind of did all of the development, and it really hasn't progressed. So it could be, but I'm planning on forking it and adding some of these value adds. So it'd be open source, for example, to provide some of these new features.
Yep. It's interesting too that you are going as far as to fork it off, and do this kind of like simplified version where you're not deep diving menus, and that's a very interesting thing that I would have never thought of doing, like actually making JS8 call work for your own purposes.
And it's exactly it, like purpose-built software. Like I said, I know exactly where the value is, and to simplify it, I think just limit the number of tools, but make sure the tools have the most impact, and just have ease of use or being the core tenant.
So you mentioned some of them. You were talking about doing packet here and there, and how it had very much a similar history to Build-A-Pi, where you were originally using this as, a Raspberry Pi set of scripts. You were doing packet for message sending, for weather reports and things like that. Can you talk a little bit about some of the other modes that EMCOMM Tools will have, or it's currently being tested?
So there are. Okay, so the original version, again, I'm going to bring these back slowly, was had APRS support over packet, had the ability to connect to a BBS over packet, WinLink, of course. And then on the HF side, it primarily used the RDOT modem for WinLink. So you could basically pick, I want packet for WinLink or RDOT for WinLink, or jump into these other modes. I spent a lot of time early on before I jumped into JS8 call playing with the FL Digi suite, and that is a Swiss Army knife. And I feel like people have moved away from it. It just is a collection of modems galore. And I actually used a feature in FL Digi called FL Message. It's a level of abstraction that allows you to transmit forms. And these are standardized like ICS forms, for example, that are used for a variety of applications. And each modem had a very specific set of strengths and weaknesses. So I kind of looked at them, what I wanted to do. So for example, our local emergency group out here, we tested FM simplex, and we found out that the MT63K modem, MT63-2KL modem, worked very well. High noise environments, you could do acoustic coupling, so that was built in. But it was kind of slow. And then we found another one called 8PSK1000F, which had error correction, blazing fast and well suited for FM. So there was a mode for that. And then there was a mode where I would actually have different configurations in FL Digi. So depending on which mode you're in, it would kind of change out all the settings for you behind the scenes and make all the decisions. So those modes are not well suited for HF. So for HF, if you were going to do keyboard to keyboard messaging, it used like Contestia 250, or was it 250-4? I forget which one. There's another mode now called FSQ that I'm looking at that has a lot of features for selective calling, like JS8 call. That's coming. But these are all things that are going to come probably next year, because I don't want to get in the position of let's re-add the kitchen or everything, including the kitchen sink, all over again.
Exactly.
So like I said, this year the focus is going to be JS8 call, doing the enhancements to the back end to support the field operations that I want for streamlined stuff, the custom UI, VOACAP prediction, and then next year probably going to start with WinLink. And what I'm hoping for is at some point we can get Vara ported to Linux, whatever that includes, because it would be really nice to have that as a...
Oh, you don't know how many people are waiting for that.
So I would pay for that, guys. So, I mean, I would fund it. I'll go on record right now. I would donate personally at great expense, probably on the order of $20,000 to the developer if he would allow who's the gentleman that did RDOP? Is it Wiseman? Someone offered to do the port. But yeah, formerly I would pay $20,000 for a Linux port that's fully open to the community.
Yeah.
To the developer of Vara.
Instead of banging our heads against wine.
Yep. Yeah, I won't run emulation.
Yeah.
It's a hard no.
Yeah. But you mentioned MT63. Was that one of the ones? MT?
Yeah, it's a great mode.
Yeah, we were actually practicing that. I got into one practice of that with my Aries group, and I loved it. I thought it was awesome. And then all of a sudden they made an administrative decision to not do any of the FL Digi modes anymore and just stick to straight Vara or Vara FM or Packet and use WinLink as the main mode of communication. So I was just kind of like, oh man, I was looking forward to like sharpening more of this FL Digi skills. And I remember all of these modes. Like the first time I loaded FL Digi, I was just like, my gosh, there's so much in here.
Yeah.
The Swiss Army knife, like you say. And I was looking at it and I was like, I wonder how I will ever use any of these other than talking to myself between two radios. And so I did find a ham. One time I was just calling out PSK31. I was just calling CQ, and I found a friendly ham. And I was talking about, well, I love FL Digi. I wish I could try out all these other modes. And he's like, well, let's try them out right now. Let's switch over to Olivia. Let's switch over to Contestia. And we're just doing all of them. And I was just like, man, this is so cool. He taught me about the identifier, so if FL Digi switches to the mode that you're, it kind of like figures out what the person's transmitting, and then it will switch over to that one. And
yeah, the Reed Solomon ID, that thing is amazing.
Yeah. And had a heck of fun with that, but I haven't really found very many others using any of these modes. And I kind of agree with you. I feel like, man, I wish people wouldn't have abandoned FL Digi. It's just such a fun set of tools, and there's so many things in there that can be used for different reasons. If you just research each of the modes, you'll see the strengths of each one and how they would work in certain situations.
Yeah, the one that we're looking at is FSQ. A viewer put it on my radar, and it has basically a lot of the features of GS8 call. I don't know if it works quite as low in noise that GS8 call does, but it has the selective calling feature, so you can actually tell it who you want to talk to and vice versa, and it won't decode anything else. I mean, the signal is still going over the air, but the software won't show you like GS8 call. You click on the spot in the waterfall, and you can decode, the exchange between any party you want.
Yeah,
that works a little bit different, but it supports file transfer too. So we're going to be testing that for HF. And I do need to apologize, guys. I've got some type of allergy, and using the mute button quite a bit on this one.
I have to mute a little bit here. Yeah, I get it. Don't worry about it if you have to take a second here. We do have a question that popped up here. John B asks, is there any work toward an information sharing platform? I'm sort of thinking of a BBS system that allows asynchronous posting / sharing of info for situational awareness.
Yeah, so we're kind of teasing that out on the Buy Me a Coffee side with the members. Train with a small group of people, mostly using GS8 call. And I personally source a few pieces of information. Recently, the FEMA puts out a great daily brief for the entire country. And it's basically what I like to call a 4-blocker. It has a slide, and it has, here's everything that's going on that's impacting well-being in the US. And they attach a PDF, and it shows you right down the state, where floods are happening. And it's a lot of information for these digital modes. So I'm just starting with my group to take those FEMA reports as just one source and redistributing them to like our TTP group. So anybody who can hear that call and has that that group call listed is going to get some very minimal stuff. The other one I want to put out too that I subscribe to are NOAA Space Weather Radio. So they'll tell you in advance of all of the solar and geomagnetic activity that impacts whether it's low orbit satellites or HF communication, and could lead to HF blackouts. And I'm working on compressing those into also a small blast. Again, we're using JSA call, but the idea is someone across the country is likely going to have access to the internet. And if we get enough people trained up on one, where to source that information, how to package it up, and how to have concise message passing. So again, that's kind of one of the kind of parallel goals that we're looking at, is distributing information like that. And then our local CERT group. So if you guys are out here in kind of the Maricopa County area in Arizona, Tuesdays and Thursdays on the W7 ARA Metrolink repeater system, we have net control on Tuesdays and Thursdays, and we kind of take turns running that. And part of our briefing is what are local weather events, controlled burns, evacuations, power outages. We actually source from our local power company how many customers are impacted by an outage. We even go into cybersecurity. Are there any current attacks? The AT&T outage was brought up. So still trying to formalize that. The point is we're looking for all of these kind of sources of real truth, not so much from mainstream media, and figuring a way to how to repackage and distribute that either locally or regionally or across the country using either local FM repeaters, HF for regional, or HF for long-range communication. So maybe 6 months from now, I'll have that all formalized and packaged up into nets.
It's like such a wish list for this project. But yeah, there's a lot of directions we can go. Yeah, I'm looking forward to following the progress. I noticed that the Gorilla drives that you were talking about in one of your videos have sold out. So I'm waiting to find more of those. I just want to mirror each of these. And I've also been on eBay looking at this FZ M1 with the I-key. I think I might just go the CF20 route, because you also mentioned that.
Go that route.
It seems a lot more available and easier to find. So if for those who don't know what I'm talking about, FCM1 and CF20, those are brands of Panasonic Toughbook or Tough Tablet, I guess, ruggedized tablets that have keyboard attachments to them, and TTP is showing them there. But they are, what is it, IP67 or IP68 rated, where you can
6.5,
6.5, where you can basically get rain on them. You can't throw them in the water, but you can, be in somewhat misty conditions, and dust proof as well. So good for the field. Right now I have, I would say 4 or 5 Evolve laptops. I know those are not good for the field, but that's where I'm kind of like cutting my teeth and getting all this stuff practiced. And then I want to get one of these ruggedized systems for when I actually know what I'm doing.
So a couple of recommendations. So first of all, I'm sorry I was the one who actually caused the spike in price. When I first discovered the 7-inch tablet here, it was back in 2023 January. They were going for $100 a pop used, and I bought 13 of them. The previous year, the CF20s, I found an eBay seller who had a pallet. He had about 500 units of CF20s that he hadn't moved in 10 years, or not 10 years, but long period of time. And I bought one, and I'm like, ooh, I like this thing because it has 3 USB ports. It has a detachable tablet, full keyboard, mouse, really quite nice, fairly lightweight for what it is. And so I bought some, talked about it, and he's like, who are you again? And they all sold out. Like, they were just gone, and they were going for like $400 at that time.
Oh my gosh.
Right now, I think you can get a good deal, 600 to 800. And what I would recommend for the CF20 is get the Mark II. The Mark I will work fine, but Mark II is where it's at. And if you're
there's no limitations on like RAM and disk space. I mean, we're talking Linux here, so I wouldn't imagine you needed super specs on it.
So the base specs for MCOM Tools and for Linux is I recommend 8 gigs of RAM, which all of these support. And then if you're going to do a single boot OS, 128 gig SSD to 256. If you're going to dual boot, like between Windows 10, go for 512 and chop it where it makes sense.
And so you're saying that the ones that you were preparing, you have them as dual boot?
Yeah, so I've got so the ones that I personally use are all dual boot. And the reason for it is I use Windows 10 fully offline. That thing has never been connected to the internet. I don't even let it do its thing. So I've got an ISO of an older Windows 10 build, and I downloaded the drivers on another computer. And where possible, I turned off all the things where it wants to do a nag screen, try to update in the field. It'll still do it occasionally. And what I'll load there are the Windows only applications. Hold on.
Yeah, he's got a little bit of a cough here. This always happens to me in conference calls. I'll be the one who's leading the meeting, and all of a sudden I'll just get that little scratch in my throat, and it's just like I can't even lead the meeting anymore. People just watching me.
Yeah, sorry about that. So what I'll install on the Windows side, once I get all the drivers, are things like the programming software. So like the Motorola software, the software for the Anytone, the CPS, and I'll put Vara on there and WinLink, but primarily I just boot into Linux, and both do fine. Even on the older Mark ones, it's slow. Like So here's something funny. People will say, "Hey man, I bought your FZM1. I bought it used on eBay, and I can't run my games on it." And it's like, it's not a modern compute workstation. If you want to think of it as a Raspberry Pi that's more rugged, and is a self-contained unit.
The thing is, a lot of the systems I've built so far, I've built 2 Linux Mint, setups to serve as Vara FM gateways. One is staging, the other one is like in the shack right now. But it needs internet in order to fulfill its purpose. That's the main difference between us, is that I am the relay of people to the internet, right? They're going to pull their WinLink messages from the CMS through me. So there's no avoiding the nag screens for me. Even in Linux, it's going to say, hey, there's a little update manager, which I could turn off, but it's going to tell me, yeah, you need to update, these packages. Just this morning, I was looking at my my gateway in the shack, and it said that SSH needed to be updated. And I'm like, well, I don't know if I want to avoid that, but the nag screen is gonna put the bug in my head, and I'm gonna be like, maybe I should update. And then the thing is with the evolves is that every time the kernel gets updated, oh boy, it's like I gotta go find the drivers that work on the new kernel.
Don't touch it.
Or for Wi-Fi and stuff. Otherwise, I don't even have internet at all. And then I'm like, okay, I guess I got to reinstall the whole thing from scratch from that old ISO that I had, because I'm just now finding out that the latest 5.15 kernel, the drivers don't work anymore. And so I understand the reason behind why you're locking it down. I also understand that your use case is purely off grid. So that's fine for Windows and Linux. I just feel like in a lot of my current uses, I don't know if I can follow that strict of a lockdown, because I have to be on the network as part of a contributor of internet to all the different users out there who want to connect to my WinLink station.
Yeah, I would say you're dealing with 2 different purposes then, right? So that system would probably be a different system altogether. It doesn't need to run on this hardware. It doesn't need to use that MCOM Tools community OS, right? Completely different. What's funny is that you mentioned it. One of the things that people probably don't realize, the first community build, I turned off every nag screen. Like, I literally removed OpenOffice, the whole suite of productivity tools, Firefox, gone. Replaced it with the Brave web browser if you need it. But all of those auto updaters that says, hey, there's an upgrade available, I figured out how to not reverse engineer it, but how to completely remove it. And the cool thing is, once you build that ISO for whatever version of MCOM Tools you're tracking, you could take that 20 years from now, and it has a snapshot of all of those versions. So assuming your hardware does not die, you could use this. Again, you could fully provision your machine again. Let's say you stockpile maybe 3 extra SSD drives for your FZM1, extra RAM, whatever you want to call it. Put it in your Faraday cages, and that was always the goal. So all of my kits have those ruggedized USB drives that go into Faraday bags, and I know maybe it takes me 2 hours to rebuild the system, but it's in a known state where all of the hard it works. Yeah.
Yeah, I have that problem right now. I have kind of like a gateway in the network sense to my network, and it runs a custom app that I built in 2020 on Python, and it's just kind of like this simple, like it's like a notes app that I made myself. I can't rebuild the thing. So I'm on this Raspberry Pi, and it's written in Python, but the Pi version, the OS version, is Stretch, which, as you know, probably is end of lifing in June of this year. So I'm like, well, I do want to update the OS on this thing, but I can't, because I already tried doing a second Raspberry Pi to host Bookworm, which is the latest OS version. And then I tried rebuilding all the things I have on that existing gateway, and half the things I can't rebuild them because the versions of Python libraries have migrated so far. And, I'm just like, I'm kind of at an impasse right now in terms of moving that system over without a lot of just deep diving into, surgically transplanting this stuff and seeing it if it even works. So, yeah, I understand that. It's definitely a big problem when it it's like if you're dealing with a moving target like that, it's almost impossible to come up with a good set of tools, because then, you step away for a couple months and all of a sudden it's just broken all over the place when you try to rebuild it.
Yeah, I mean, what you're describing is something called bit rot. And for those people who are old enough to remember, you may have media that you have on maybe a 3.5-inch floppy disk, DDS2 tape drives, CD-ROM, DVD, and you probably don't have, even though you have the bits, you may not have the operating system, the hardware like the drives, or the software. Nice. Dennis is holding up a 3.5-inch floppy disk. I've got old new stock of those. I still have Windows 95 on Windows version.
That's kind of a joke. I actually use that as I had a PowerPoint to turn into my boss. So I gave him that. And he's like, what am I going to do with this?
Well, it's funny. It's like I want to get out of tech before I turn 45. So I'm giving myself maybe another 3 years to fully get out of it. I didn't realize I was old until I started working for a client in your neck of the woods. And I brought up just, that I have a 2018 or 2016 Jeep, and I had a CD in there. And I had to explain what a CD-ROM was. They had no idea. Yeah, they were born with an post iPod or iPhone generation, and it's funny
knowing that. Wow.
So I asked the question because I saw a meme not too long ago where they're like, "Why does the file save as icon have this little square on it?" It's a picture of a 3.5-inch floppy, and they can't even mind map the iconography back to why that should be a save.
I remember
call to action.
I remember the hot thing for your car was getting a disc changer in the trunk.
Oh yeah.
That was the thing to have. Then you could have all 7 of your CDs in there in the back.
Yeah. I bought my wife a new car, so her last car still had the disc changer in the back. We had 5 CDs with a little, insert where you plop in all 5.
Yeah. Oh man. Yeah, you just made me feel real old. But I actually had a car that had a cassette player in it. So, yeah.
I was trying to explain mixtapes to somebody. I remember there was a song when Coolio did Gangster's Paradise in the 90s. My friends and I would sit there with our tape deck waiting for the radio to play it. And we'd always not quite catch the beginning of the song. And then we'd always get like the outro where they start talking over the end. And that's how we made freaking tapes for each other, was just stealing it
straight off of the radio.
Right off the radio.
So I wanted to give you the opportunity. Did you want to do a little show and tell of your older version of MCOM Tools here? I know we had it all set up here.
Yeah, let's go ahead and do it.
All right,
Let me know when we're ready for the
let me
share.
put that in the main stage here.
All right. So this is the R55 build, and this one is not being released, but I'm going to be pulling features out of this for what will be a later community build. And the thought here is this is all you see. There might be another tile for some other information, but first steps are you basically go in here and you've got a radio that you want to do digital mode communication, and you select the radio you want. And if you're running one of the Panasonic ToughPads or ToughBooks, all of this is touch, so everything is quite large here. So I could switch to the Zygu X6100 or the 857. I just added support for the G90. So really simple interface here. If a radio was connected, it would actually show you here the frequency that the VFO is on, the mode of operation, and a few other things. Older builds had a feature here called op mode, where you could basically click on a button and it would reprogram the radio. So I kind of want to show you that. There were other features that I've removed, but this is what I'm calling the tactical awareness map. For the sake of this demonstration, we'll go to online here. So this is where I'm roughly located. The build of EMCOMM Tools that I have has a fairly large offline cache map. I have about 30 gigs of maps from my area, including offline topographical maps. So I can actually zoom in here and use this for land navigation if needed. So let me go back and switch this here back to OpenStreetMaps online. And where the power comes here, there was since I had cat control interface via the Digi rig, there was this idea called find repeaters. So you would be geodetected if you had onboard GPS, and one of the features was it would basically pull all of the repeaters from Repeater Book and cache those locally. And then you can go here to the gear icon.
Do any of the Panasonics have GPS?
They do. Yeah, and it's going to be very limited support. Most of them have like an LTE module, which you can get GPS from. I did early work to get that going, but it's something that's coming later in the year. What I will be adding is the ability for you to pick a spot. So let's say, you could drop a pin, for example, and you could move to that position, and now that's you. So in the absence of GPS, you can basically put yourself anywhere on the map. So yeah, it'll find the closest repeaters in your area, and you can go there and set the radius. That was one thing, was this idea of this offline map. So let me hide the repeaters. You talked a little bit about using PSK Reporter. I'm not connected, but there's this thing called Show GS8 Stations. So if you have GS8 running in the background, it will actually find all of the call signs in your area. And there's an offline FCC database that I geocode down to the registered zip code, and it will plot where you're propagating into at that point fully offline. Unfortunately, I can't show it right now, but I have some stuff on Instagram. The other thing you can do, like for example, this is the offline call database because I'm a search engineer by trade. So Dennis is 86DM, and it does a full offline lookup, and it has some telemetry information here. So I could see that he's got
that's pretty cool.
585.
Shows the bearing, everything.
Yeah, altitude. So it basically geocodes 54,000 zip codes from the US to a representative altitude, and then also location on the map. And then you get the grid here. But what's cool about it, and this is the one feature that is online. So if you do happen to be online, you can do analysis tools, and it does a path analysis between us. So this is not great for HF, but if you were closer, let's look at my buddy. Let's see who's local here. November Juliet 7 Victor. I think that's Charlie, right? Yeah.
Yep.
So you could see Charlie is 51 miles from my location at a bearing of 141. And then the analysis tools here, we probably could communicate, even though there's a little bit of a peak here. So it's really kind of handy if you've got internet connectivity. Since I mostly do NVIS communication, we actually show the map here in real time. So right now, for example, in the region that I'm in, this spot in purple, I can do NVIS up to about 11 megahertz. And then I also have the ability to drop you into the vocap tool. And I've got the your call sign, your grid square, and Charlie's grid square that you could cut and paste in.
So you're probably going to try like 30 meters, I would say, if you wanted to do NVIS.
Probably 40, but yeah, 30.
40.
Yeah, 30 for us seems to have a lot of skip, and I keep on going to the East Coast, but 40 is very consistent during the day.
Very cool.
So yeah, I mean, there'll be something that I'm calling a pace planner, and the idea is there'll be another dashboard option here where you can enter in your frequencies, your modes, and you just click on them, and it completely reprograms the radio.
Wow. Very cool. Oh, let me switch it back here. So yeah, that's kind of it that I had for the questions I had in store. If the chat has any questions for the Tech Prepper, please enter them now, and we can get them up there. But otherwise, was there anything else that you wanted to share? Anything you wanted to plug?
Yeah, shameless plug. The best way of supporting what I do is on buymeacoffee.com/thetechprepper. And while I appreciate the one-time coffee donations, the monthly memberships really help me out. There are 3 different tiers, and it's a monthly subscription. And it just really helps me because I'm investing most of the channel funds in product development, overhead for the channel, new gear. I've moved away from accepting any gear from people. It's just too much work to take stuff from the vendors out there. So I don't do that anymore. And like I said, for example, the call to arms that I did to the developer of Vara, if he's going to take me up on the offer, I would take $20,000 and probably clear out everything I've saved in the over the last year to put that into a cause like that. So like I said, I try to use the community funds for kind of keeping all things going, even for things like the Manpack builds, for example, buying the materials to do the prototype, paying someone to do a pattern design, things like that is what you would be supporting. Not so much the lighting equipment or the cameras, although that occasionally comes out of it. It's really just to do all of the product things. And then the goal is really to eliminate the day job. I can't imagine how fast these products would be being shipped if I could sit down and have a 12-hour day or even an 8-hour day, 7 days a week. The velocity of what I'm doing on the software, on the bags, on the training would just be orders of magnitude more popular. So shameless plug, that's what you would be supporting at any one of those tiers.
Yep. I got the Buy Me a Coffee link up there. It's buymeacoffee.com/thetechprepper, all one word, /membership, if you wanted to take a look at that, as well as his YouTube channel. It's youtube.com/@thetechprepper. Definitely give it a look. It looks like we got a couple questions in here.
Hold on, one thing. Also Instagram by the same name, The Tech Prepper.
Yes.
That's where I post almost daily. And the videos there are very raw, unedited. So if you kind of want to get a sneak peek of everything I'm working on in flight, that's probably the best choice to look at.
We have one here. I'm a monthly member and would be interested in contributing to the situational awareness system discussed earlier. Thanks, both.
Oh, thank you, John. Appreciate that. Yeah, definitely reach out. Shoot me a message on the platform.
And then expected support for the touchscreen on the build with the tough books.
Touchscreen is already supported. It's a little bit awkward because whatever Ubuntu 22.10 does in terms of touch support is what is supported. That's not an area that I have the technical competency to fix. And that's kind of why I landed on the tough books. So I think the only thing that does not work is the the pen on the CF20.
Mhm.
I haven't been able to figure that, but all the gestures, the multi-touch gestures, all of that stuff works on MCOM Tools.
I end up losing anything that has a pen. I end up losing anyway. So
yeah, they're tethered, and the tethering drives me crazy.
Okay, I didn't
because it
know
gets
that.
snagged on everything, especially out here. I've had like the cactus kind of rip them off. I'm like,
but
okay.
Just a couple weeks ago, I found the Apple Pencil. It was like between my my bookcase here, covered in dust and cat hair.
Yeah.
So those whatever you try with a stylus or pencil doesn't work for me. Yeah. Well, I think that's it. Thank you very much, Gaston, for being on the show. Thanks for reaching out. It's very enlightening, and I am very much looking forward to both the new bags that are coming out.
Yeah, it's gonna be fun.
And the developments that you have on your MCOM Tools Community Edition. I'll be following very closely. I'll definitely post on Twitter if I manage to land one of those CF20s or FCM1s and start following along.
You mean X, right?
What's that?
You mean X?
Or on X, yes. And I'm kind of just holding off on any other gear right now because I know I'm about to go to Hamvention. So I just want to see what kind of damage that conference does, and then afterwards follow some of these other paths that I want to get on.
So I tried to go to Hamvention. I was looking at flights this morning. I was going to have it be a game day decision.
Mm-hmm.
And there are no direct flights from Phoenix to Dayton.
No.
Everything
I'm going to Columbus, and then I'll drive in. I'll rent a car.
I'll look at that because as a consultant, I used to fly into O'Hare all the time, and it seems like that is always the connecting multi-hop flight. And
yeah, my friend lived in Dayton, and she told me that because I was going to go to Cincinnati and drive in, but she said going that way, there's only one choke point. There's one way to get there, and it's potential for that being a problem. So it's better if you come in from Columbus and you got multiple paths to get in to Dayton. And I mean, either way, it's going to be a drive, but at least do the one that, so we won't be like Josh. He went to Visalia just last week, I think it was, and got stuck in 4 hours of traffic on the 5. So
ouch.
I would hate for that to happen.
Keep an eye out for hopefully a Yaesu 818 replacement. That's the only radio that I'm willing to buy this year.
Yeah.
And
I know that K5YVY, I was hanging with him in Huntsville, and he picked up a FT5 handheld, and I was like, I've not seen the price come down that low since, so I'm hoping that they'll have some kind of sale price of one of those at Hamvention, and then I just want to see what else is going on there. There's definitely a wish list that I have, but I just want to see what they got going on out there. Plus, you may not know, but I fried my tablet. I had a tablet from Huntsville, and I was guessing at the voltage of the barrel connection to charge it. And I figured, most tablets are 19. I figured 12. Let's try 12. So I plugged in my Denko with a very special adapter to get the right size barrel, and I heard a pop and the smoke, and then it died. So so now my theory is that it's actually 5 volts because micro USB would charge the thing.
Interesting. Yeah, the Panasonics that I love are 16 volts.
Yeah, so not quite Denko compatible.
Oh, yeah. So I'm going to do a shameless plug for Dennis. So
yes, he picked one up.
I picked one up. This is the what are you calling it technically? Is it the 6 amp hour, or it's like 5.5 amp hour?
I call it 5.5.
Yeah.
But yes, it's the standard flat pack Denko battery. Good for excellent for QRP operation, but also good for QRO. It will go up to 20 watts or 20 amps. current, continuous. That's not peak. So it will definitely handle QRO levels. And yeah, I'm glad you picked that up. I guess that's going to be part of some of your experiments as well.
Yeah, I plan to use this primarily for the IC705 for the vehicle stuff, but it'll work for the G90 at 20 watts, and I'm going to try it with the 857. So I do like this different form factor. All the other ones are from Biowina are typically like a rectangle or squarish.
Yeah, they're kind of a brick, and this one is a little flatter. Yeah.
So the other thing I have here, I know we're going a little over here, but this was one of the prototypes that I kind of played with, which is I call it the Slim Boy, and it's different from my original man pack. In fact, this is running in the
what is that?
Is
that an 818?
It's an 818. It's my original 818 from like 5-6 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
But I realized I could run it on a 3 amp hour talent cell battery that does both 5 and 12 volts and eliminate the front pouch.
I actually got an inquiry from someone asking, does Denko make a 3 amp hour battery? And I'm looking into it.
Yeah, that'd be good.
My manufacturer of cells does not provide the 21700 sized cell. I wish they did. I'd totally just get a bunch of them and start making those. But they only provide the 32650s. So that's why I have the 6 amp hour form factor. But so I'm currently just reviewing suppliers or manufacturers of batteries right now to find the smaller cells, and then I will be able to come up with those QRP sized batteries.
Yeah, let me know, because like I said, I'm trying to do more lighter weight outings, and I'm trying to get everything in what I call the Slim Boy package here. And I like 3 amp hour. The talent cell works, but it'd be nice to have a Denko 3 amp hour battery.
Well, thanks for your support, man. And again, thank you for being on the show. Definitely, let's keep the updates. If I always get the updates because I'm Buy Me a Coffee member. So if any of you want to know the latest developments in any of this, definitely sign up for his Buy Me a Coffee membership. You get a lot of previews. You get a lot of like first dibs at things. So like when those bags come out, you will get kind of the front of the line treatment for picking one up. So
yeah, I've never sold anything publicly yet, just because of the small batches I produce, and not even everybody ends up getting them. So that's the only way, unfortunately, right now how we're scaled, or I'm scaled to release product.
Well, that's it. I think we'll call it.
All right, guys. Well, thanks for having me, Dennis, and appreciate everybody who tuned in on a Sunday or catches this on. Is this going to be on a streaming platform too, like audio only?
Yes, I'm going to capture the audio and put it on the podcast as well. So
very nice.
To all the listeners out there who are listening to this on a audio device, sorry about the show and tell and not being able to see what we're exactly dealing with, but yeah, that's the nature of these live streams sometimes. But I hope you get the gist. It's a fascinating and awesome setup in the MCOM tools, as well as some of these things we showed, like the bags and the ruggedized tablets and laptops there. That will be in the description in the show notes as well, if you want to take a look at each of these things and want to take a gander and try to get one for yourself. All right, I will call it. Thanks a lot, everyone.
7 3s.
7-3, everyone.